Hi and welcome to the Philosopher's Games. Today we will have a look at Dark Souls 3's last DLC, the Ringed City. I try to keep this video as spoiler free as possible. I don't show bosses, but the first two of the three available areas. I would consider this minor spoilers. Well, this will be easy. The DLC is very good. Even though it has a few things I dislike, I would say the DLC quality we are used to is back. A common complaint about the first DLC, Ashes of Ariandel, was its short length. The Ringed City seems in contrast larger, has more variety and more bosses. If you have seen my Dark Souls 3 review, you also know that I dislike the relentlessness of some bosses with far too long combos that doom you to wait until they are done. Ashes of Ariandel had this in an almost extreme form, and it's still present in the Ringed City DLC, but they improved a lot here. Since I won't show bosses, I can't go into detail, but I would say it's a good mix between different boss concepts. They are all very unique. Mechanically, one boss was a bit boring, but still felt difficult and with this annoying for me, even though the presentation is again and overall in this DLC at a very high level. Another boss is a bit gimmicky and maybe a little reminiscent of Demon's Souls. I have to admit I like the idea, but they don't leave the style of Dark Souls 3 mechanically and in my opinion don't manage to improve the series even further here, as the Artorias of the Abyss DLC did with its boss designs in the first Dark Souls. Still, I would say the bosses are one of the DLC's strongest parts. The Ringed City is also quite difficult. I would say on NG it's for characters around soul level 100. As mentioned, art style and presentation are really well done. I like the colors and the landscape views. It's almost romantic. Some areas are just beautiful to watch. If you like the art direction of Dark Souls 3, you will like this too. Also, there are many little details. In addition, the music is amazing. I already liked the Dark Souls 3 soundtrack and the DLC will end the series on a high note. You can hear it in the background. Another positive thing is definitely that exploring the world is rewarding. There are some secrets in the world that can be hard to find. Also, there are some amazing little details in the designs that will surprise you. I won't spoil it, but just a small hint. If you have beaten the first boss, look carefully. Related to this, the equipment, like weapons, seem to be really cool and strong. Also, we get more Dark Souls 2 stuff. In this context, I can't say much about lore right now, but there are definitely a few little magic moments. You come into a room and think, wait, what? It's great, but I don't feel like that all questions are answered now and they could have tied a few things closer together. On the other side, Dark Souls lore was always vague. But if you are into lore, there is a lot of interesting stuff going on and I can see interesting theories coming up. I don't want to spoil it here though. Another thing that I also don't want to spoil is the new Covenant. Be surprised yourself. It's not groundbreaking, but will be a lot of fun for many players. Same with the last boss. I think I would criticize a few things, but overall I enjoyed it a lot and much more than the final boss of the last DLC. What I really like about this DLC is its variety. It feels like a great journey through different places with different enemies and even playstyles and approaches. You start at this surreal area called the Drag Heap, go deeper into the world, overcoming challenges, and then you are looking at the beautiful Ringed City. But even there you find places you don't expect and feel different. And then the last area, I won't spoil it, extremely surprised me. A great moment in the DLC. I would say the DLC has a lot to offer, and each area has its own challenges and is memorable. I think they managed to let you feel the scale of this interesting world. A lot of praise from me, but I also want to comment on some of the problems, even though I consider those minor. One thing I dislike are some of the enemies. I think most of them are really well done. But there are areas that can be next level annoying. If you know what to do, it becomes easier, but I feel that this design encourages players to rush through areas. And it's okay if it would be only one area, but you could argue that you find this concept in multiple areas. Sure, you can deal with it and even remove the annoying element, but from my perspective, it's not worth the trouble, so in future playthroughs I wouldn't even bother and run through the annoying parts. Another problematic element that is present in all Souls games but feels even more problematic in this DLC is the camera. In, for example, some of the boss fights. You don't see anything. Against two bosses you are better not locking in the camera, and even then you will sometimes not see what's going on. That is especially frustrating if you consider the damage output of some of these bosses. Dying because your camera clips through the enemy is not that great. Some bosses in this DLC have not only a lot of HP but also high damage resistances. Often my damage just got halved, which is a bit frustrating, but also very weapon dependent. I saw a level 1 character in a challenge run stream dealing more damage per hit than my level 83 character on the same boss. If you have the wrong damage types on your weapon, you can get screwed sometimes. Not the biggest fan of that. But you get a lot of materials to upgrade your weapons. Like the game wants to say, try another weapon, you have the materials for that. On the technical side, I haven't run into many problems. I had some frame drops in the first area, especially while recording, but that could be just me. Overall, this is a great DLC that can be quite challenging, and they created great boss fights for it. The areas and worlds seem large and beautiful. If certain enemies are not annoying you, exploring is a lot of fun. Also, there are a lot of nice references to the other Souls games, almost in a symbolical way, if you think about it. I would also say there is a lot of variety in this DLC, from the areas to the enemies and bosses. Everything feels unique, with some intelligent references. In my Dark Souls 3 review I said that it has too much fan service, but at least it's well done fan service. The DLC fits perfect to this, and I think it's logical that the last piece of DLC for the entire Dark Souls series tries to reference all the previous games. I would say they did an amazing job. All this is crowned with an epic soundtrack. With all that said, only one question remains. Is it worth the price? I think yes. It's worth the $15, and I like it so much that I would also argue that it makes even the Season Pass worth the price. I still would say the Dark Souls 2 Season Pass was better value, but it's still okay. Should you see the Season Pass a bit cheaper, like $20, it's a must buy. So my recommendation. At the end, I want to talk a little bit about the Souls series. This DLC is probably the last piece of content for quite some time, if not forever. When Dark Souls was released, it conquered my list of favorite games of all time and found its space in my personal top 5. It was like a game made for me. It was not perfect, but brilliant on so many levels. While Demon's Souls was more of an insider tip, Dark Souls' success showed that there's still a huge audience for games that are not holding the player's hand, that are also not afraid to challenge the player or take him serious, but also be a little bit unfair and frustrate the player. For sure, Dark Souls didn't invent this, as we can see if we think about games like Ultima Underworld, Super Metroid or the old Castlevania and Zelda games. Those for sure inspired Dark Souls too. But I think what Dark Souls did is reminding the industry that people still like and want those games, if executed well, and that you can make challenging games and still sell a lot of copies. The Souls series made the interesting journey from an insider RPG niche title to almost the lower ranks of AAA titles with Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3. The series definitely left footsteps in the industry. I think it's a good point for the Souls series to end, because the formula maybe suffered a bit of fatigue over all those years and all those games, at least for me. But the Ringed City was a worthy end for it. I hope that we see more titles that are not afraid in the future, as for example the new Zelda Breath of the Wild. Also, I'm very curious what From Software does next. We will see. And this wraps up my video, and sadly the Dark Souls series. Looking back at my guesstimating video for the second DLC, I had some right ideas, but also some wrong ones. I won't spoil it here though, maybe I do an extra video, but first I have to figure out the lore myself. In this short time, I haven't thought much about it yet. If you like this video, consider doing the YouTube things or check out my other stuff. I made an interesting video about difficulty in video games, which also includes Dark Souls. Or if you are stuck at the first boss of the Ringed City DLC, I also made a little boss guide. With all that said, thank you for watching and goodbye.